Okay, Monday, Second Timothy chapter 1. This is actually, the book that we've been going through. So just wanted to share a few insights, different angles to it that we didn't really share during our Bible studies. So I just wanted to focus on verse 6 and 7. It says, "For this reason I remind you to fan into flame the gift of God, which is in you through the laying on of my hands. For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self-control." So, and we just all heard the news of you know people and different people going. Some of your peers might be going and things like that. But going or staying, this I think is what we really need to do to fan into flame, right? To fan into flame the gift of God. And the DT question actually asked, what is the gift of God? And I think it's actually not very clear if Apostle Paul had something very specific in mind for Timothy, some kind of gifting. But perhaps it's the gift of the gospel, because that's something that for the rest of the chapter it talks about, that the good deposit that has been entrusted to Timothy. So that's for sure, like that's a gift, right? But also, verse 7 seems to suggest that this gift has something to do with the spirit of power, of love, and self-control, right? And then he says, well, we got to fan that into flame. And how do you fan that into flame? Power, love, and self-control. And it turns out, actually, there are steps to fan that into flame, right? And power is, we're not talking about some supernatural spiritual power here, like, because it's contrasted to fear. It's not of fear, but of power, right? So it's actually talking about boldness to speak, to share the gospel. And how do you fan that into flame? Well, you can open your mouth and to boldly claim and to say to your coworkers something like, "Hey, everyone, I have some books that meant a lot to me," like Kenny did, and that ends up bearing fruit much later. Well, that you can fan that into flame like that, How about doing youth ministry? Sometimes I think it takes the greatest boldness, you know, the blank looks that they give. Oh my gosh, it just like somehow brings you back all the way to like high school days, and you just feel like, gosh, I'm so afraid of rejection by these like 16-year-olds, you know. Maybe even just blank screens. How about that? Maybe that just makes you feel insecure. Well, you can practice boldness. How do you fan that into flame? How about you share passionately, you know, something, maybe passionately you share the gospel passionately, or you share something from your heart with all sincerity. Oh my gosh, that takes some power and boldness. But you can do that, and without the fear of rejection. For God gave you a spirit, not a fear of rejection. So just wanted to encourage you with that.
Mm-hmm. So verse 7 reminded me of the handout we got today at MBS about fear versus faith. And of course, it didn't say fear versus faith, but there's three other things in contrast to fear: power, love, and self-control. So instead of responding in fear, we can respond in these other ways. And so he talked about power, and also with love, we can respond in love. And again, that's something that anyone can do. It's something that when we're feeling fearful, what is it that's going to get us out of our fear? If we reach out to someone in love, that often gets us out of our fears. Like, I remember so many times doing DC outreach and feeling really nervous and fearful about going in and talking to strangers. But then when I actually sat in front of someone and talked to them, and I start getting interested in them, I guess it's not love for that person like we think of touchy-feely love, but I'm interested in them. And so it brings me out of myself, brings me out of my fears. Or I think about the times we went to ECM homes too. Like, I always feel pretty nervous. Like, I don't know what I'm going to talk to these people. And I think old people make people feel afraid, even though, like,
I like old people.
Object.
They're the easiest person for me to talk to, but
yeah,
but I
and
guess
old
for
people
some
like
people,
you too.
yeah,
But
because I look old. Is that what you're suggesting?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't know why they like you. I don't know, but they, I don't know. It makes people feel afraid, even though objectively they can't. They're like the least people who can do anything to us. But just thinking about what am I going to talk to them about, but then as I try to engage them, that would bring me out of my fears too, like just moving towards someone. So we definitely have the gift of many relationships. That's a gift we can fan into flame through love, from our leaders to our friends to the inner high students and younger ones. So just doing something to move towards that person can just diminish other fears we have in our life, and the just the power or the proportionality of that thing that seems so fearful.
Yeah, and
as we take
that
steps to
experience that you're talking about, where you're afraid, and then but then you kind of fan that into flame, and it does burst into flame because you kind of go over that fear. The fear of talking to a newcomer, or new person. Well, like all your peers, like they were all new at one point, right? And you were afraid of them. Can you believe that? Right? But it sort of like you go over that, and then it has kind of, you fan that into flame, and it's now a different situation, right?
Yeah, so for all of these things, if we don't fan them into flame, then they grow cold, like love grows cold. And also our fears will grow. So,
Yeah, I think especially now, love growing cold, especially in SIP. I think it has, because especially when we can't physically see each other, the separation naturally makes us feel cold, and that love for each other has grown maybe stale and cold, and it's like, yeah, well, we gotta fan that into flame. You know, Finally, self-control. Okay, you can fan that into flame for sure. You can practice self-control. Being able to say no to your flesh, and just getting your body to move and do things that you actually want to do. That's another thing that has taken a pretty big hit during SIP, I think. We're not really used to moving fast. The first law of Newtonian physics, or Newtonian law of motion, which is, things that are at rest remains at rest. Oh my gosh, that has really taken over. That Newton's law has taken over our lives, maybe. So, gosh, like we can practice that. Self-control in the mornings. Self-control regarding sleep, self-control regarding overeating, or all those things. Self-control, and let's just practice those things and try to get it back to where it was, and even beyond. I think we can actually go beyond that, and that's what we can do during this time when there's a lot of exciting things happening, a lot of maybe nerve-wracking things, and insecurities floating around. We can fan into flame the gift of God. That's what we can focus on. All right, that's it.
okay.
All right,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.